Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. In a minute, I am going to introduce the host of today's webinar, but before I do, just a few quick announcements. We'll be answering your questions at the end of today's discussion, so please enter them using the chat at any time during the discussion. We will also be sending a recording of today's session to everyone, so please watch out for your email. All right, and then the host for today's webinar is CoreALM President Steve Oken. Steve led his first SAP transformation in 2005. Since then, he's been a business transformation leader for some of SAP's biggest customers. So Steve, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Onda, and thanks everyone for joining our webinar today. I'd love to hear more about why you decided to join today. We've got a very exciting topic. You know, if you could put your messages or your interest in the chat, that'd be great. We'd like to hear more about what is interesting to you about this exciting new product that we're going to announce today. We want to talk about our topic today, which is managing SAP transports directly from ServiceNow. So just to kick things off, for many companies, ServiceNow manages changes across all their applications, but managing SAP changes and their transports is usually more complex than that. So in today's webinar, we're going to talk to CoreALM solution architects Donik and Sajith and Donik, who will explain how you can manage SAP transports directly from ServiceNow. In today's market, we see huge pressure to innovate faster, but change can be hard with SAP. So how can companies keep up with the speed of innovation without introducing additional risk? That's the question that we're going to be challenging today's guests with. And so without further ado, I'm going to kick it off by introducing our first guest for today, Donik Malademi. Donik was a technical consultant at SAP for 3 years, starting back in 2007. He joined CoreALM at the time of our launch in 2011. And since joining CoreALM, he's implemented change management processes for QVC, Kyndryl, Abbott, Flowers Foods, Kodak, and more. And he's an ALM architect and a change and release management expert. Welcome, Donik.
Thank you, Steve. I'm happy to be here.
Donik, we have a really exciting topic today because we're announcing one of our new products at CoreALM, the ServiceNow Transport Management for SAP. So, Donik, to get us started, can you help explain why it was that we decided to develop this new product?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the bottom line is it's all about giving our customers options. So as you alluded to, many of our SAP customers use SAP Charm to help manage their transports. They also use potentially Cloud ALM, and it's a new technology that's emerging from SAP. However, it's not completely ready for change management features as Charm provides. We also know that customers who run SAP manage other applications, so it's not only SAP, and that's when they use tools like ServiceNow for enterprise-wide changes. Then we have SAP changes, but some leverage Charm, some leverage ServiceNow, but managing changes in SAP is a lot more complex than managing a change in ServiceNow by itself. As you alluded to, SAP environment requires transports, requires movement of transports, and we really wanted to give customers an option where they could manage transports directly from ServiceNow, whether and then there's several features that we can talk about, but we knew we needed to include the same features to control and controls similar to Charm, which prevents issues and errors in the transport process. And essentially that was the origin of the product, and I'm excited to say that's what we've built.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we're going to walk through the product today, so stick around for that. We're going to do a live demonstration as part of it, but you talked about the features. Let's start with some of the kind of like must-have features that are part of a change and release management tool. What do we have baked in?
Sure. Yeah, there are several features, but I'll start with a few which we think are the foundation. So the basics are we need to be able, or you need to be able to create, release, and import transports. So you need to, for the same transports, we have found out that the transport of copies feature, it's a welcoming feature and it's a widely used feature by the customers. Therefore, we thought that that would be a nice feature to have in our solution. And then you might have transports that are already in flight. So we need the capability of, for example, if you're managing a change and you need to add a transport that was created outside of the process, we added the couple and decouple transport feature to where you can couple existing transports. And then for larger projects, this is a very important feature, is we don't want to sit around and move individual changes, but we can do mass movement of transports based on statuses. So it's more at the project level rather than just focusing on the individual transports. There's a lot of other features you probably need, but I haven't mentioned yet. But yeah, there's many others. But these are the high-level features that we're introducing.
Makes sense. So, create, release, and import of transports and transport of copies, couple and decouple, and then mass import. So that all makes sense. What are some of the additional features that really made Charm so popular, and how do we, make sure that we're not sort of stepping back and losing ground with this direct integration?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So on top of the basic features that I just described, Charm also does a lot of checks, like avoiding errors, problems such as cross-system object locking, downgrade protection, cross-reference, and sequence checks, which enable us to streamline the process, and as we move transports, to really catch any errors that further down they're going to cause issues and delays. In addition to that, there are more complex things, such as managing multiple landscapes. Customers might have scenarios where they have a project and a maintenance landscape. All the landscapes need to be kept in sync. So, and those are referred to as the N+1, N+2 landscapes. So where there's different scenarios that are available that we have encountered, and the tool, we're developing the tool as such to be able to address all of those requirements from different customers. So in order to keep the different branches or the different streams of transports, to keep all the systems in those streams updated. And yeah, we want features like retrofit and repack, which will help us with keeping those landscapes synchronized.
Okay, that's awesome. So I guess, will all those features be covered in CoreALM's new product then?
Yes, that's the plan, and majority of those are already in place. And essentially, we wanted to be able to give customers a viable alternative to Charm without compromising on features, because those are features that have helped us in many, many projects when we go live. But we wanted them to have access to those features directly from ServiceNow, not necessarily having to use Charm.
Okay, so if you're not using Charm and the focus is on ServiceNow as your kind of primary interface, then how does it really work on the ServiceNow side? Can you just walk us through that?
Sure. So in ServiceNow, typically a customer will have a change request that will be used. It's a change type that will be used for, and within that we have branches of different change types, like in terms of urgency, whether it's standard, normal, urgent. But with this new tool, customers will be able to integrate our tool into their process. So for example, they will have a couple of options at a high level. They can manage the transports manually. So for example, in a change document, they can create transports directly in an SAP system by using the action buttons that we provide, and release them and all the features that we talked about as far as the TOC, or we can have those same actions be executed based on statuses. So it's very flexible from that perspective. Depending on the customer scenario, we'll be able to adapt and use either or option.
That's great.
Then just to add, then there's, of course, not every change will require an SAP change. So what we allow is for the customers to, what we'll do is we'll introduce a flag to where we say this is an SAP change, which then will create another, or will make visible another tab where you can specify the transports that you want to create, where the action buttons are available. However, if you choose, for example, you could have scenarios where you want to automatically assign that field. We can, ServiceNow is very flexible from that perspective. And what we'll be able to do is, for example, if you assign a request to an SAP team, we can automatically set that flag to yes, so you get the option as far as adding the SAP transport. So the end users for non-SAP changes, there's options to not even, they would be oblivious that this even exists. So what we're trying to say is that we're not going to change the existing workflows and processes that you have. We're just going to integrate them better.
That's very important because we get a lot of feedback from customers when we start talking to their teams about this type of integration. The first question is, well, you can't change my change process because there's a lot of people that rely on it. So this way that you described with that checkbox there, it prevents you from having to make any changes for non-SAP. And for SAP changes, it's only displayed once you click that button, and then you get a new tab. So all of the existing tabs and fields are untouched. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Essentially, once you select it, at that point, our application will display another tab where they have the system information because they're going to have the target systems. And then within that screen, they'll be able to add, move transports, or any updates that are coming from the system will be displayed on the screen, including all the details as far as the transport is concerned. That's
great. Okay, awesome. And I guess we'll see all this in the demo. It'll become a little more clear. But before we get there, I want to ask some important questions. So when it comes to managing changes, and you've got a lot of experience doing this, there's obviously a lot of considerations that we need to put in place, like considerations relating to security, segregation of duties. How do we offer this kind of convenience of directly managing SAP transports from ServiceNow without compromising the integrity of the change process?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a very, very important question. First, I want to start with the ServiceNow has a very robust security-based security infrastructure, if you will. In addition, the workflow systems in ServiceNow can be customized, and keyword here is can be customized if needed, to ensure that only certain users have access to certain approvals. So for example, when a change request is in a specific status, the end user will not even see the action buttons by that security model. We can also control things in the backend, so specific users cannot execute specific actions. However, ServiceNow does provide a very robust framework, and we'll be able to enforce those. And one of the common scenarios that we run into is that most companies will prevent the developers from approving and importing their own transports. They might allow for the POC, but not necessarily the entire process. So to enforce segregation of duties using our product, customers can configure ServiceNow to restrict the actions that are exposed depending on the role or the status of that particular change. And if the user is not authorized to make a specific change, they won't even have the option, as the buttons will not be visible. So that is going to ensure that we are able to enforce the SOD rules.
That's awesome. So, I guess that really, if you don't have the option, that'll keep things in check. And sounds like there's quite a lot of flexibility there. So I'm dying to see the demonstration, but maybe one more question before we go. So we've talked quite a lot about the checks and the types of restrictions that are needed to maintain the integrity of the change process now. But we've also said that we really want these applications to help us speed the cycle of innovation. So that seems almost like a conflict, right? How do we solve this problem of giving them speed, but still making sure we have the appropriate restrictions in place?
Sure. Yeah, because often we're adding more processes and controls, and really that's a good question as to how it's going to help us. Well, it can help us in a few ways. So to answer your question, we'll have to kind of take a step back and see how most customers manage their transports today. So for example, some customers still manage transports manually, which can lead to errors. It can lead to inconsistencies when importing, if importing the transports in the wrong order, not following, making sure that all the requisites are met. So those do take a long time to investigate and then to correct them. So ideally, we don't even let them happen. So in those situations, put in restrictions on promoting certain transports will actually save time, because it will save, and it's often is very hard to quantify unless you've been through it several times. So that's just an example. Customers that use Charm today, those restrictions are already covered. But however, the change process in Charm is independent from the change process in ServiceNow. So now, if we manage the change process in two different tools, now we introduce a new problem of data synchronization between these tools. So now we're adding another dimension of managing the data and the timestamps on both systems. And many companies require people to be involved in the change process, which duplicates their work by copying the data. And this furthermore causes delays and inconsistencies in the change process, although we have some controls in place. Then what's most important and very important for a lot of customers is that the status and history of all the changes are captured in different systems. So we need to consolidate the logs from auditing perspective, what happened when, and that's very difficult. And typically we see this when a change manager or an auditor wants to look at the status history, and we have to go back and dig into the system. So at CoreALM, with our ServiceNow extension in place, which integrates Charm with ServiceNow, they have access to the current status all in one tool, and they can see everything in one change document versus looking at multiple documents, and we ensure that the data is synchronized. And we believe that it's all reliable because it's sent directly from an SAP system, where we also have retry capabilities and whatnot. And in this way, we're actually speeding up the change cycle without compromising the integrity of the change process by eliminating wasted time after issues have happened. And it's very hard to quantify the business damage, post effect. So we're trying to catch those early.
Yeah, and I guess you would know firsthand, because I know you deal with a lot of those issues that our clients face, and we go in and try to help them with those things. But these tools you mentioned, like you said, just avoiding some of the issues by doing those checks up front, that saves time, reducing duplication of effort, and then improving the compliance logs and putting it all in one place. Those are just some of the benefits. So that's great. And we're going to go into a demonstration. I'm going to introduce our next guest in a minute. Is there anything else that you want to cover before we switch gears?
I think the last thing I want to state as a reminder of what I stated earlier is that really every customer has different needs. And so it's all about providing options. And we have many customers using SAP Charm, and it works great for them. But for those customers, our ServiceNow connector and SAP Charm connector allows them to take advantage of the rich set of features of each tool, along with integrating the tools, data synchronization, and that helps streamline the process. We also have an integration between ServiceNow and CloudALM to integrate the CloudALM alerting with ServiceNow incident management. And that goes back to, every customer has different needs, therefore we have different remedies for each of those needs. And as soon as the features of Charm are available in CloudALM, we plan to extend our ServiceNow to also include CloudALM connector, or to include CloudALM as part of the connector, to provide an integrated change and release management process between those systems. This new product really will allow people to manage SAP transports directly from ServiceNow, and we have a similar product to allow SAP transport management directly from Jira or Azure DevOps. So we plan to further extend and include other tools, because every customer has a unique environment, so it's all about providing those options.
That's awesome. Thanks very much. So I'm going to just run back through that list that you mentioned, because there's a lot of value that we bring to the table there. So if you want to manage transports and you're using Charm today, you want to continue to use Charm, we can do the integration between ServiceNow and Charm. So that's the first one. I guess second from that is if you are doing ITSM work, You can do that with your existing Solution Manager ITSM capabilities and tie that to ServiceNow as well, so that you raise incidents in ServiceNow from those. And then we provide similar alerting functions on the Cloud ALM side. So Cloud ALM alerts to create incidents inside of ServiceNow. And then you also mentioned if you want to use other tools other than ServiceNow, we also provide similar features for Jira and Azure DevOps. I think that sort of rounds out the list. So lots of options, basically, is the bottom line, which is what I think is what customers need, because like you said, every environment is different. We'd love to hear more about what is interesting to the people that have joined today's calls. And if you're watching the recording, then please reach out to us and let us know if you have specific scenarios you'd like to discuss, because I think we do have a lot of options. They're all fully flexible in terms of configuration. You don't need to write any custom code for adapting to your particular unique environment. So we'd love to talk through those problems with you, and we can do that here today for those that are here live. So now it's time to introduce my next guest. Thank you very much, Donik. That was an excellent walkthrough. Sounds like a great feature. Now let's see it in action. So Sajith Kanath, welcome to the webinar. And just as a way of introduction, Sajith is an SAP ALM architect, and he leads the CoreALM offshore development team in India. Before joining CoreALM in 2017, he spent about 9 years as a lead SAP-based consultant at Infosys, Capgemini, and Accenture. He's installed our CoreALM products at some of SAP's biggest customers: Bayer, Adidas, Kyndryl, Flowers, Abbott, I'm sure many more. Welcome, Sajith.
Thanks, Steve. I'm glad to be here.
All right, Sajith, we're going to get started with this demo as soon as possible. We're keeping people waiting too long, I'm sure. But before we get started, maybe you can talk a little bit about the architecture and how this new product gets installed.
Yeah, sure, Steve. So about this product, which is Direct Transport Integration, or SAP Transport Management, directly from ServiceNow. And coming on to the deployment options, so there are two parts to the deployment. One is mainly on the ServiceNow side, wherein we have our plugin, the ServiceNow plugin available. It is approved and certified by ServiceNow, and it's available in the ServiceNow store for download. The customer can directly download the plugin and deploy it in their ServiceNow instance. And on SAP side, so we will be providing the transport, the external transport, to be deployed on SAP, and it is within CoreALM namespace, which needs to be imported into the SAP system wherein you want to do the transport management. So coming on to the deployment, we have two options mainly. Suppose you have multiple systems in the landscape. For example, you have ECC, CRM, BW, and so on. So you can go with two approach. One is you can have this deployed in each of the development environments. So in each environment, you can deploy the transport. Or we are also providing an option, which is a centralized approach, where you can have a NetWeaver system, which will be connecting to the different development environments in the landscape. So if you're going with the centralized approach from ServiceNow, all the requests will be routed through the NetWeaver environment, and the NetWeaver environment will route it to the different development systems for the management of the transport. Whereas if you're going with the decentralized approach, the ServiceNow will be directly communicating with each of the development systems in the landscape.
Okay,
and coming on to the, coming on to the communication. So as we know, ServiceNow is in the internet, and the connectivity from ServiceNow to the managed systems, it happens through the mid server, and from the managed systems or from the development environments to ServiceNow happens through a direct RFC connection.
Got it. Okay, so it's a small plugin that you install from the ServiceNow store on the ServiceNow side. SAP, you have two options. You can install it in each of your SAP instances that you want to manage, or the centralized server, create a NetWeaver instance, and it connects through the mid server and then manages all of your applications. Perfect. Okay, that's great. How long does it take to do this installation?
So it's actually pretty simple, provided we have access to all the necessary access in the environment. It takes just a couple of days. And also we need to ensure that the connectivity, as I mentioned previously, needs to be established between the systems. So it's just a couple of days task, in fact, to deploy it.
Okay, well, that sounds pretty easy. And do we require any custom code? I think not, right?
No, it doesn't. So after the plugin is deployed or after the transport is imported into the SAP system, it's just some couple of configuration steps which can be easily done. And we would also be providing the customer with the documentation. And after, so we'll be providing the KT. And after the system is handed over to the customer, they would be able to easily manage with the help of the documentation as well.
Okay, that sounds amazing. I'm not going to delay any further. Let's take a look at this product and see how it works.
Sure. Let me start sharing my screen. Just give me a second.
We can see your screen.
Okay. So before we start with the demo, we'll just walk through a couple of slides, which will give you an overview about the product, most of which, almost everything Donik has already explained. So just going to the features. So this is a direct integration with the SAP Transport Management System. The only prerequisite is that you need to have the STMS configured in your landscape. And you don't need to have the Solution Manager system or no need of CHARM configuration. And with this connector, you can create, release, and import transport requests directly from ServiceNow. So you'll be seeing all these options within the ServiceNow itself. And it also supports, like we already know, in CHARM, we have the option to create transport of copies, wherein suppose you have an incomplete development and you want to create an additional task without releasing the TR, and also you want to test that in the quality environment. And if you need to make any changes, you can just create another transport of copy and import it and test in the quality environment. So it supports creation of transport of copies. And the advanced features we have in CHARM, cross-system object lock and downgrade protection. This connector supports those as well. And as Donik mentioned, we have the coupling and decoupling option. So if the ServiceNow change is already connected to an existing transport request, you can decouple it. And if you already have an existing transport request in the SAP system, you can couple with an existing change request. And also, as I mentioned, you don't need to have any additional infrastructure, whether you're going with the standalone approach or you're going with a centralized approach. We can use any of the existing SAP system, SAP native systems in your landscape. No need to have any additional servers.
Awesome.
So coming on to the deployment options, which I already explained. So just a diagrammatic representation of the same. So we have a standalone mode wherein the ServiceNow will be communicating with the development environment through the mid server. So if you have multiple systems, it will be connecting directly with the multiple development environments in all the landscapes. And when we go with the centralized approach, there would be a NetViewer instance wherein we'll be deploying the SAP transport, and the ServiceNow system will be directly communicating with this NetViewer instance. And this particular NetViewer instance will route all the requests from ServiceNow to the individual development environments. So hope that part is clear. And now we'll see how the ServiceNow layout looks like once we have the plugin installed. So once we have the plugin deployed in ServiceNow, we'll be able to see an additional tab, SAP Transport, only for those changes which are going to be integrated with Transport. So if the change, so we'll also be having an option, SAP change is equal to yes or no. So once you select that particular field, if you set it to yes, we'll be seeing this SAP Transport field visible, and within which you will see multiple options, as you can see in here: create TR, create and import transport of copy, release TR, import TR, and so on. And here you have the create TR option, which will give you a pop-up to enter the details of the transport request to be created. You can give the description and in which environment or in which development system you want to create the transport request, and what type of transport request you want to create, and enter the owner details. And if you want to have multiple tasks added under the same transport request, you can add as many users as you want. So this is an SAP user ID. Just give the SAP user ID and add, and it will append those many tasks within that particular transport request. And once you click on create, it will be creating the transport request within that particular development environment, and the details of the transport request will be visible under this SAP Transport tab, like you see in here. So here we have already three requests or workbench, and the owner, and what is the current status, and the description, and so on. And also, as you see here, we'll also be seeing the last import status, last action status, and if there is any issue with, if there is any warning on CSOL or DGP, that will also be displayed in here. So with that said, if there are any questions,
I think we're good.
let me know. Otherwise, we'll directly go to.
Yeah, and we can the questions.
All right. Sure. So this is our ServiceNow environment. Let me go ahead and create a change request. I'll go ahead with the normal change request. Just fill in the mandatory details. And this is the field which we mentioned about, whether this will be deciding whether this is a SAP related change or not. So if it is not an SAP related change, you can click on no, and this will continue as a normal change workflow, and you won't be seeing the additional options to integrate with the transport management system in SAP. And if you want to categorize this as SAP change, select this field value to yes, and immediately you can see the SAP transport tab appearing in here, where you have all these options for creation and release of TRs. And I set this to yes, going ahead and saving this particular change. Now this change is saved, and let's go ahead and try creating a change transport request in our demo environment. I'm giving the description of the transport request here. So here you can select the dev system. As part of the deployment, we will also be entering the system details in which we want to integrate with ServiceNow. So here we have added two development environments. So I'm going to select the first one, TMD, which is an ECC environment. And here we can select which type of transport request you want to create. So let me go ahead and create a customizing request. And if I want to have mention, so I'm going ahead and mentioning this owner. I'm giving my ID. And if you want to have task, you can do that as well. I'm creating task for another user as well. I just created two tasks, and all the details are now maintained. Going ahead and creating the transport request. And once you click on create, you will also be able to see the details in the notes section. So you can see transport request is created. Go ahead and reload the screen so that we'll be able to see the details within this tab. So like I said, this is the transport request which just got created, the type and who's the owner, what is the current status, description, and so on. So the last action status is creation of transport request, and that is also displayed here. And once you click on this, it will expand and it will show the task within this particular transport request. So here you can see one task, it's on my name, and the second task is on with my colleague's name. The next step is so from this particular transport request, I can create and import the transport request into the subsequent system in the transport landscape. I can directly release the TR and then directly import the TR in the qualities environment and decouple this and so on. So let's go ahead and try creation of a transport of copy. Just copying this transport request. This is the environment in which we created this. You can see this is a particular transport request, the description which we gave, and two tasks under this. I'll just go ahead and release the task. I'm not going to add any objects in here. Just release my task. I'm going to release the second task as well. So both customizing tasks are released, assuming that the development is complete. And now the transport is still in not release status. What we'll do is let's go ahead and click on create and import TOC. And what will happen next is let's go and check the import queue. So ECQ is a subsequent system. in which the transport of copy will be created and imported. So let's see if the transport of copy is there. So you can see this is the original transport 373, and let's refresh. You can see the comments that transport of copy is created. Also, within this, you'll be able to see the transport of copy details. So 376 is the transport of copy, and in the last action status, TOC success. Go ahead, this is the transport of copy, and the import is successful. You can see the import status as well. And you can create as many transport of copies as you want. So if you want to make more changes, add more tasks and create transport of copies. So the next step is I'm going to release this particular transport request so that I can directly import the original transport into the quality environment. If you don't release, let's see, the transport is released. You see the transport request is now released. Just reloading the form. So last action status, transport release success, status is released. And the same information you will be also able to see in the comments. Let's go ahead and check the import queue of ACQ. So once the transport is released from the development environment, it will be added to the buffer of the quality system. So this is the original transport request, the description, and it is added to the buffer. And from service, you don't have to do the import within SAP. Even with, as I mentioned, you can do the import directly from ServiceNow itself. Select the transport request and import transport request. So this will trigger the import into the subsequent environment directly. Go ahead and refresh. So the transport is imported and import is successful. The same will be updated on ServiceNow side as well. Import, so the last action status imported in ECQ. And notes also says important ECQ is successful. So as per our transport landscape, the next system for import is ECP environment. Let's go ahead, select this, import TR, which will trigger the import into the production environment as well. So depending on the customer requirement, so for the production environment, either we can do the import directly from ServiceNow, or even you can do a batch scheduling as per the release process with the standard functionality of SAP. So now the transport is triggered and it is also imported successfully into the production environment as well. Refresh, the same status will be updated. So you'll be also able to see the import status in ECP as well. You don't see any CSOL check or DGP check because I just created an empty transport request. So if you have any objects added to this and if there is any conflict or logs, you'll be able to see that information also in here with the object details. So that completes the demonstration. If you have any questions, we can answer those.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for walking us through that. It's really exciting to see how easy it is to manage transports from ServiceNow directly. Awesome. So I'd like to thank you both for explaining this new product. It's really exciting to be able to bring this to market, and we're sure it's going to be a big hit with customers. We're already getting a lot of interest. If you are interested in learning more, you can connect with us at CoreALM.com. That's CoreALM.com. There's a talk to an expert button right in the top right corner of the screen. You can submit your form there, or you can send an email to us. info@CoreALM.com is another option. If you're watching us live, then we'd love to get to hear your questions, and we have time that we can answer some of those right here today with our experts. So let's check. I think we've had a few questions come through already. So let's see. The first one is, what changes happen in my ServiceNow system when I install the add-on? Sajith, do you want to take a crack at that?
Yep, sure, Steve. So there won't be absolutely any changes as such in the ServiceNow environment. So if you have an existing workflow in ServiceNow, it will adapt to it as it is. You don't have to make any changes in your existing process or in your existing workflow. So once you deploy the plugin, what happens is it will also be adding a couple of custom tables into the ServiceNow, which will not be counted as part of your license. So this will be, as our product is certified by ServiceNow, these tables will not be counted as a customer within the customer license. So there will be a couple of tables added, and also we are providing a custom view so that this particular view wherein you can see the SAP transport request won't be visible for non-SAP users. So that particular custom field will also be added to the change layout. Other than that, absolutely there are no other changes.
Okay, that's good. So trying to keep it as simple as possible.
Yes.
So what about on the SAP side? What are the changes on the SAP side? You talked a little bit about installing those transports. It goes into its own namespace, so it doesn't conflict with anything else that you have. What else do I need to do on the SAP side? Anything?
Absolutely. So no impact on SAP side as well. So either to your existing transport process or existing STMS configuration, absolutely no changes to that. So the only thing is that we'll be creating a couple of RFC connections if you are doing a centralized approach. From the central network environment, we need to create RFC connections to the managed systems development environment. And also, as I mentioned, this is going to be within CoreALM own namespace, and it's not going to impact any of the existing configuration or development in your SAP system.
And for the networking part of it, you talked before about that mid server, which you probably, if you're using ServiceNow, you probably already have that mid server, which is how you're currently talking between ServiceNow and your other applications within your landscape. So I guess it just piggybacks on that same method for the networking side. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then, of course, you're going to have upgrades that are happening. ServiceNow is always introducing new changes. I think the latest is Washington's just came out. How do they stay up to date on making sure that that plugin is always up to date with their current release of ServiceNow?
Yeah, with each ServiceNow release, so we keep our version up to date. So once ServiceNow releases the latest version, we also get our product certified and approved by ServiceNow, and the same will also be updated in the ServiceNow store within just a couple of weeks after the latest version is released. So by the time the customer is ready for upgrade, our product will also be ready for them.
Okay, fantastic. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I'll give people a minute just to type things in if they have any last questions or to present their use case for these experts to see if we can solve a unique challenge for you that you might be experiencing. Otherwise, I think we'll move to wrap up today's webinar. I want to thank our guests. You can come on the screen one last time. Thank you, Donik. Thank you, Sajith. It's really exciting to have this this product available for our customers. Donik, as you mentioned, it's kind of like just giving customers more options. I think we have a lot of great options now. Thank you both very much. Oh, I have one more question that just popped up. Let's see here. I gave you enough time. That's great. So this question is, how does the approval process get managed for those transports in ServiceNow? So I guess it's talking about some of the workflows. So whatever your ServiceNow workflow process is going to be, whatever those approval steps are, I guess we're not getting in the way. You can, have whatever process you want for the approvals based on the workflow that you have in ServiceNow. Probably it's just works as you have it today for the ServiceNow. But if you want to introduce special steps, I guess you could do that on the ServiceNow side. Is that a fair statement, Sajith?
Absolutely, Steve. So as I mentioned earlier, this does not impact your existing workflow. You don't have to make any changes. So the current approval process will follow as is. But if the customer wants to have any additional customization, we should be able to do that. But the workflow and the approval process will remain as is.
So I guess in Charm, there may have been statuses and steps that are different than what you have in ServiceNow today. So if you want to, I guess you could always add additional steps to the ServiceNow workflow that would allow you to sort of introduce additional approvals if needed on the ServiceNow side, so that you can have the same kind of level of control. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're right, Steve. Yes.
Okay. If there's any other questions, please let us know. Hopefully that answered the question that was entered and the other questions that were entered earlier. Oh, I have one more. Oh, it's just a thank you for answering the question. I think we covered it then. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today live. Thank you, Sajith and Donik. Great demonstration, great walkthrough on this exciting new product. And we look forward to hearing your use cases in the future. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.